Hey everyone, welcome to Demo Days. Nice to see everyone in the chat today. Lots of activity, lots of folks from everywhere. Where are you from? I know India is strong today. Hello from Kenya. Awesome. Good to see you. Good to see you. Just a reminder, all of the demo days, just like normal, will be recorded and available immediately on LinkedIn right after the session. You can watch the session right here on LinkedIn. You can watch it right here on Twitch. And of course, it will also be right here on YouTube after the fact, shortly after. In any case, I'm going to introduce our guest today. He is a veteran from Demo Days Season 1. And hey, Kevin, how's it going? Can you see me now?
Hey, I can see you now. Can you see me now?
Yes, I can see you. Welcome to Demo Days. I know you're used to our Season 1 digs. What do you think of the new setup over here?
The new setup's looking pretty good. I'm excited to be here with you all. I see you can actually now add emoticons to the LinkedIn stream, so that's going to be a lot of fun. If you're excited to be here, just do an applause. Let's see. I'd love to see how many applause we can get going in the chat channel here. And I dropped in a comment there. I hope this presenter is all right. So we'll see.
Yes, I definitely saw that. As you can see, we've got folks from all over the place, all the way from New Jersey to Kashmir. So, like, we've got tons of folks ready to see what we're going to talk about today. And I know we're going to talk about advanced security. And that's usually a pretty niche topic. Like, if security isn't a part of your regular developer job, like, why is it a topic that you should care about?
Yeah, so I think a trend that we're noticing across the industry, a trend with most of the folks we talk to who own the security from the different organizations that we work with, the ongoing theme is that the developer is becoming increasingly a stakeholder in the operations of the applications they're shipping, in the infrastructure of the applications they're shipping, and naturally also now, in order to scale the number of folks who are bought into security, developers are also beginning to own the security of the applications they're delivering. And so DevSecOps, if you will, is something we talk about really often. And hopefully some of the features that I demonstrate with you kind of bring to light, what our philosophy as GitHub at GitHub is, and how we bake that into our own features.
Awesome. I can't wait for you to dig in. Take it away.
All right, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here with you all. So just bear with me for one moment while I make myself a million times and then settle in here. Great. So again, thank you all so much for being here. It's a lot of fun to come back. This is my third time being with you on Twitch for GitHub, and it's always a privilege. And what I ask from you, if you're tuned in from anywhere in the world, if you could just continue to interact with us on the LinkedIn stream. I have my colleague, Hollywood is his GitHub handle, and his name is Jonathan Cardona. So he's going to be asking any questions that you might have as I walk through some of these features. And actually, my intention is not just to introduce some of these advanced security features, but also to get hands-on with you. And so I've prepared a learning lab in partnership with our engineering team at GitHub. And so I'm going to be doing some hands-on stuff here with you. And if you'd like to follow along on your own machines, you can actually go hands-on with me too. So go ahead, drop in some of those emotions on the LinkedIn page. And that's going to let me know that you're interested, that this is a direction you want to go. And again, the feedback that you give us really does drive the content of these sessions. So feel free to drop in anything you'd like to see, and we'll do our best to cover that for you. And so I'm going to talk about GitHub Advanced Security, some of our latest features, and then we're going to get hands-on in the Learning Lab. So what you might have already seen here, hopefully you already traced down this URL to this blog post, is something that's really exciting for a lot of the folks we talk to. So the GitHub Advisory Database, I'm just validating that you're seeing my screen here, which I believe that you are. Great. Which screen are we seeing? Okay, so the GitHub Advisory Database is really where we aggregate the various sources of vulnerability data that we get from the National Vulnerability Database, from the open source community themselves. And so there's a private workflow. If you're an open source maintainer, you may have already been exposed to it, where if somebody as a security researcher comes along and says, hey, you have a vulnerability in a package that you maintain, you might want to patch that. right? And so that open source maintainer will patch that vulnerability, and they'll go ahead and they'll let GitHub know, hey, this package that has this tremendous amount of consumers that are incorporating in their applications, it has a vulnerability. And so we'll actually include that after curating it back in the advisory database. And that's increasingly where we get all of our vulnerability data. And so when you start to explore like what's so interesting about GitHub and your tools and this and that, it really comes down to the data that powers the platform. And so you'll notice that's a recurring theme from everything that we talk about. It's always about the data and really trying to enable the open source community to do their best work. And so we're always trying to advocate for developers. So let me go ahead and show you what the experience is here from the advisory database if there was a vulnerability that one of my applications happened to be exposed to. So I think I'm going to move myself to the other side of the screen here so you can see, I think it's on this way here. So here's the advisory database. What you'll notice is that I have this search bar here. And so if I want to look for a specific package, for instance, like hello.js, which was being described in that blog post, I can do that. I can see that there's one open advisory, which looks like a cross-site scripting vulnerability. I can click into that package and notice that there's a critical severity vulnerability that was published 23 days ago for this NPM package. And you can see, the affected versions, the patched versions that you should probably upgrade to. And then what I wanted to demonstrate is this new tab here. So this is super cool. Dependabot alerts will now surface. Basically, if you have a repo and you're consuming this package, if it's listed in your package manifest, we're going to send you that alert and surface it through this interface. So let me trace this back to the repository itself, okay? So here's my organization called Octodemo. Here's this repository called Dependabot Alerts and Advisory Database. And you'll notice where I go, and hopefully this is a familiar interface for you because we've been demonstrating it in all the previous Twitch streams. And so I hope you've had some exposure. If not, this is really how we are enabling and empowering you as the developer to have visibility into the security of the applications that you're developing, right? So look on the left side here where it says Dependabot Alerts. There's one open alert, and it happens to be for this hello.js package. And so we'll give you insight into the version of the package that's vulnerable, right? So you can see here which package, what version is vulnerable and what you should actually bump this package to, okay? And some a little bit more detail. Actually, if you click on this link here, you'll notice on the bottom left, it's probably super small for you. So I'll go ahead and do that. But it's a very circular experience because now this takes you back to the advisory database. So let me go again to the alerts, to the affected repositories, and back to this security tab. Okay, so now I'm seeing that I'm exposed to this vulnerability from this package that I'm consuming, and this is super cool. So let me show you this feature here, which hopefully you're familiar with. If not, it's great, and we're laying on additional functionality that you're going to begin to see, and I'm going to share with you today. So there is a pull request that Dependabot has already opened from or for hello.js to bump from version 1.18.4 to 1.18.6. So we can go ahead and click on that. You'll notice I just flipped right over the pull request tab. And then I get a little bit of information. And so this is what's really interesting. I can actually trace the commits that the open source maintainer made in order to patch this vulnerability. And so this is where those are described, right? And so you can see that basically Dependabot saying, hey, we're going to bump hello.js from 1.18.4 to 1.18.6. And then you can go ahead and basically you can run your checks on this to make sure there's no regressions in your code. So you'll run your CI, you'll run your SAST, all that good stuff will surface back here automatically. And then you as a developer can land here and click that merge button, right? And then actually it's a pretty easy experience to actually patch these vulnerabilities. We did ship a beta. I'm not going to show it to you now, but we did ship a beta for automatically merging pull requests. And so you can imagine a world where if there's a certain compatibility score, I'll explain why this is unknown in a second, but if there's a certain compatibility score for one of these pull requests, we can automatically merge that PR for you. So that's the world that we're kind of getting towards, right? Which is that we're going to have applications that are automatically staying up to date, ensuring we're not introducing regressions. Now, this repo happens to have only manifest files in it, and so it's not a great example of the compatibility score, but I do want to talk about this. Maybe now's not the best time, or maybe it is since I've already brought it up. And I see folks still interacting in the chat here, so feel free to drop any emojis or any comments, anything you'd like to see as part of the conversation. So this compatibility scores, basically, we've opened this pull request for Hello.js across the open source community. And what we know from the status checks that happen on those repositories is how frequently the status checks fail as a result of this PR. So we're able to say with a certain level of certainty, if you will, what the compatibility is for this patch to your application, right? How probable is it that this patch is going to introduce a regression? So that's super cool. I always like to call it out for any folks who Dependabot's a little bit newer for. But of course, we're going to take this, I believe, just another level deeper and look at actually the security center itself. And so what a lot of folks ask us, I'm going to go back to the security tab here for just a moment. What a lot of folks ask us is, okay, this is great at the repository level. How can I get like visibility across my entire organization so I can understand maybe as like an engineering leader or a project manager or program manager, what the overall health of my organization is from an application security perspective, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and show you what that experience is just briefly, because actually we shipped it in an alpha. So you would have to have special access to it through GitHub Advanced Security in order to have this feature. But I want to share it with you, quick sneak peek, and and hopefully this conveys the direction that we're headed with our security center. So I'm going to my organization interface here as an admin, and I have this similar security tab. And what you'll notice with this alpha, again, it's just an alpha, but I want to kind of illustrate something here. You can actually see across the domains for GitHub Advanced Security, which is your SAST with code scanning. So that's your native, code scanning at the repo level. You have your secret scanning alerts here. So if you're pushing any of your tokens, which we all do all the time, it happens like you wouldn't believe. I mean, every time we enable advanced security for a company, they light up like a Christmas tree. So we'll show you your secret scanning alerts, and we'll also show you your Dependabot alerts here. And you can filter on these things, right? So if I click on code scanning alerts, you can see for a given repository and a Node Goat project, we have all these open alerts, no secrets leaked here, which I'm surprised to see, and then your Dependabot alerts. So what I'm going to do is go to actually a specific repository. So I think it's called. Yes, I had it on my clipboard. So that's my little cheat there. Let's see. Okay. So what you'll notice is I filtered to a specific repository here. Now I can see all these repos that match these results. I can see across the domains, which alerts are open. And you can actually filter this down. We just shipped, I'm not going to show it to you yet, but we just shipped the same interface at the team level. So that's super cool. So I'm going to click into this repo. Hopefully this is the one that I intended to share. And we're going to look at the pull request to see how, with advanced security, there are this new functionalities being baked into to our SCA capabilities, right? Our software composition analysis capabilities. So what we've done is we've continued to centralize the security insight and the conversation around security of your features inside of the pull request workflow. So if I scroll down here through my pull request and click on pull request 22, I believe, by my good friend Isaac here, you'll notice that he has checked in 14 files in this pull request, okay? And so if I have Dependabot enabled, which has run a scan for any manifest in my main branch, but also now because this organization has advanced security, I can see as part of the PR workflow when a package has a vulnerability inside that PR workflow. So if I change the view to the file view, what I'll notice is this pull request, I can see I'm pulling in my package JSON. It's actually pulling in JSON logic, which is a component that has a known vulnerability, and it's a high severity vulnerability at the version that we've been pulling it in on. So if I click on this, my expectation is that I would go back to what you've already seen, which is that advisory database. So I'm going to do that, and you'll notice again, we've been taken to the GitHub advisory database. Here is a vulnerability with a high severity that's been published on November 12th, and we're kind of alerting you to that. Now, none of your repos are actually affected by, or none of mine rather, are really affected by this specific package vulnerability because it hasn't made it back into my source, it hasn't made it back into my base branch, right? And so I would see if I merge that PR, a Dependabot alert, with the experience that we just saw together a moment ago. So that's what I wanted to share with you, is how this traces back from the pull, the pull request workflow back to the advisory database, and giving you that insight and giving you that insight directly inside the PR workflow. And really, I think the expectation is here, and just giving you a little bit of foresight into what we're working to deliver, is making this stuff so that you can enforce policies on it. As a dev lead, as a a project manager, as an engineering leader, maybe you want to say that all of your maybe you want to say that every pull request that your developers open against your base branch, you want to make sure that you're not introducing any high severity vulnerabilities through open source components, right? And so that's the type of policy that we are seeking to help you to enable on your PR workflows. And so you can do things like that with just branch protection rules if you have code scanning enabled today. And in the near future, you'll be able to do the same thing with that level of granularity in the dependency review. Awesome. So I see Jesus, a WordPress developer on LinkedIn. He's loving these new features. You're awesome. Great call out. Okay, so where do we want to go next? I think the place that I'd like to go next, so I really wanted to introduce some of these GAS capabilities, so GAS, GitHub Advanced Security, but then I wanted to do a code along. And so if you're interested in either just watching me and not necessarily doing the work yourself, some folks are dialed in from Asia, some folks are dialed in really from across the world. So if it's like midnight for you, or you're just hanging out on a Friday afternoon having a beer, maybe in the UK, there's no reason why you have to go hands-on. You can just watch me. But if you want to go hands-on, I'm going to give you the ability to do that. And we're going to implement a CI pipeline together. So that's the next step here. I'm going to kind of transition away from talking about GitHub Advanced Security for a moment. We're going to look at a full pipeline that actually my colleague James presented a little while ago. So we're going to do a quick review, talk through some of the steps in that pipeline, and then and then get hands-on together through Learning Lab. So I see Jonathan's actually having a conversation with Ahmed in the LinkedIn chat. So that's awesome. Eureka, Git is live. That's right. And Nathan, I see you commenting in there. What's going on, my friend? Cool. Okay, so let's see what we're actually going to be presenting. Let me close some tabs for you so you have a little bit of a better idea. So here's this really simple app that my colleague James has built out so that we can demonstrate some of the new functionality. So let me just go ahead and look at, like, for example, searching a GitHub handle. I've had this open for some time, so we'll see on this like dev VM whether or not I get any response in a reasonable amount of time. But the idea for this this project is you would type in a GitHub handle. It's going to go hit the GitHub APIs, grab that user, and surface it back in the interface. And so I'm not going to wait for that request to resolve. It's just not a good use of your time, and not a great use of everyone's time here. So what I'd rather do, and hopefully what you'd rather see, I think, is this. And hopefully this looks familiar. That means you've been tuning into our other streams. If not, I encourage you to check out the other videos. James Laha did a great job. I know Brian Cross very recently, I think last Friday, was on here with you all talking about other GitHub functionality since Universe, which is event we did in November. So this pipeline does a few things, okay? So this pipeline, as you can see on the left side, is comprised of these jobs that basically there's a matrix build. So we're actually running a build across these build and test rather across these versions of Node. And so it's a matrix build. And then we basically use Prettier, which is a package that actually helps us format our code. And then we use linting in order to make sure that we're kind of adhering to best practices and everything's looking fine and dandy to be upgraded to a higher level environment. And then we run our SAST. So we do all these three things in parallel. What you notice through the illustration here, I'm going to make it a little bit larger for you if you're dialing, if you're on mobile. I just want to make sure you're able to see exactly what we're doing. We got some feedback from you all in the past that you just want it to be a little bigger. And I should probably get out of your way, shouldn't I? Let me go ahead and do that. No matter where I go, I'm going to be a little in your way. So we're just going to have to make do, and I'll jump side to side as it makes sense. And feel free to keep me honest. I see Daniel saying, long live GitHub. For sure, my friend. Yeah, so let's see. Here's this pipeline. What are we doing? We just talked through, I think, some of the jobs here, right? So we're building and testing in a matrix. We're just validating that code makes sense to deploy to some environment. And if we do say it looks good, so we make that deployment dependent on these three checks, then we want to deploy it. It's actually deploying in Azure, and then we validate that by pinging the URL. If we validate that it's been successfully deployed to this sandbox environment, then we deploy it to QA, okay? And what you'll notice here, what you'll notice here is that that deployment fails. It fails on purpose. We don't actually want to do that deployment. And so you'll notice that it fails here, and then we never do a validation because we never actually deploy into that higher level environment. But I think what I wanted to do with you was I wanted to actually walk through. I know it's kind of corny, so hopefully, I know y'all are pretty technical on the line. I see a lot of developers, a lot of folks just in tech generally. So I'm going to walk through the YAML just for a moment, at a high level at least, to show you how these jobs come together to form this pipeline. And then again, we're going to get back into some actual doing this stuff live. So what I'm going to do is just a quick sneak peek here into what we're going to be doing. So I see Basile commenting on Azure sites. So check out the chat. I just dropped in LinkedIn. I just dropped the lab.github.com Learning Lab module that's going to allow us to go hands-on together. So if you'd like to, as I'm talking through these jobs and talking through how we came to create this pipeline, you can get started there, and hopefully I'll catch up. And we're going to get as much done together as we can today. So you can do kind of both in parallel, or you can just watch me. Again, totally fine as well. Feel free to do whatever you think makes the most sense. So let me just zoom out here. And I just shared that link in the chat. I see my friend Hollywood, Jonathan Cardona is kind of working with you all. So I'm going to the top here of this workflow, and I'm going to view the workflow file so we can talk through the workflow file for this run together. How's this view? Hopefully it's not too small for you. So the origin of this workflow is pretty interesting, because when you launch your first GitHub action, what you'll notice is that you have this, really it's a marketplace of available workflows that have been created by different service providers who would like you to consume their services. In this case, this is an Azure workflow that's already been mostly developed and scaffolded for me. I had to layer in, as you'll see, some custom jobs, but it was really easy to get up and running with. You could do the same with Terraform workflows. You could do the same with different SaaS tools. There's a lot going on there to integrate actions. And so hopefully, my hope is, and I think GitHub generally, is that if you're delivering a new pipeline for a new project or translating some pipeline from another CI tool, it'll be pretty easy for you to at least get started, because those template workflows will already be available. So for the folks who are less familiar, if you already know GitHub Actions, then just bear with me for a moment. We're going to talk about some interesting stuff, I promise. But if this is new to you, if this is a new tool, I do want to just make you generally aware of how it works, what the syntax might look like, and specifically how this workflow came to be as we saw it being executed before. All right, so let's look at lines 18 to 23 first. It says, so I see that James, this is my colleague James delivered this, even though I forked it into my own personal user account. I think this is public too. So if you wanted to actually check this out yourselves, let me go ahead and drop this. Let me go ahead and drop this repo in that LinkedIn chat in case y'all want to come here and comment, make issues, and not too many issues, I hope. Awesome. So Daniel's working in there. I see that. Hello from Brazil. Hello from the US. I'm in New Jersey. So hello from New Jersey. Okay. I dropped in the link to this repository. If you want to check it out, poke around a bit, feel free to do that. Feel free to steal any of the workflows that we've already developed and pull them in your own apps or whatever. Obviously, take a look at what you're merging before you do that into your own apps. Goes without saying. So, okay, lines 18 to 23, these are triggers for your workflow. Okay, so we're really going to, as GitHub, with GitHub Actions, subscribe to a number of events across the platform in order to trigger your workflows. And so in this case, we're basically saying that on a pull request against your run me branch, we want to run this workflow. Okay, so you can also do that against your main branch. You can also do pushes against some feature branch. Right, you can get really granular with this, and you can also pass in an array of branches in terms of your triggers. Now, what is interesting is what's on line 19, and I think you've seen this in the past, and so I'm just going to spend a moment. Line 19, workflow dispatch. So workflow dispatch is a programmatic trigger for this workflow. So if maybe you had repo A wants to trigger a workflow on repo B, like you have some, I don't know, it's like some microservices that are just scaffolding out some application. You can trigger your workflows from another application using workflow dispatch. So all you have to do is ping this endpoint. You'll see if you look at the documentation for workflow dispatch what that endpoint is for a given repository, but then this workflow will actually trigger and then obviously deploy your application. So we set up some environment variables here that we dynamically inject at runtime. All this stuff was really scaffolded out for me by Azure. I didn't have to type it, which was cool. All I had to do is really drop the values of my Azure web app name and all that stuff. And then we have these jobs, okay? And so in this case, on line 34, the name of the job is build and test, right? So that's pretty cool because we saw what it looked like before. So here's the build and test job that was executed 10, 12, and 14. And there's this strategy matrix. That's why we had 10, 12, and 14 versions actually executing. And then there are these steps that are part of this job, okay? And what you'll notice is this common component, which is this checkout action at these, at a given version. So that's just pulling your latest source code into the runtime environments. And then you'll see that we basically just stand up your application, build it, and test it. And so that's what we've done here. Now, there are dependencies for these other jobs inside of your workflow. And so what you'll notice is that for the prettier job, we're dependent on build and test. And so you saw that a moment ago when I was showing you what the illustration looked like. And so prettier is dependent on build and test through this needs keyword. You can see the environment that it runs on, all that stuff, kind of self-explanatory, which is great. You can pass in these secrets. In this case, I'm using GitHub's native key management system, which is scoped to the repository here. You can also scope it to the organization if you're, if you're an enterprise and looking to implement CI/CD. Here's this next job called linter. Same thing. We're just dependent on this specific the build and test job. And I'm just going to scroll down for a moment. I know it's hard to follow, but I promise I'll stop scrolling in a moment to this this deploy to sandbox job. Okay, so in the deploy job, we are dependent on the build being successful. Makes sense. The linter being successful, prettier being successful. Okay, what we're not dependent on, however, in this case, because our AppSec program has not actually reached the maturity level that we want to make this deploy dependent on a successful pass. So we're not going to block a deployment based on the SAST results here. Okay, so that's kind of an opinionated thing. But the idea is, since our program's not that mature, we don't want to create extra friction for our developers or be a developer and have all that friction. I just didn't want that to be the case. And so lines 113 to 117, or rather 111 to 117 is where the magic happens. We deploy to Azure. We specify the Azure publish profile, all that stuff stored inside my key management system, inside of GitHub. So this is all good. This is all great. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you, so this is the validation. I'm not going to spend too much time there. Really, all we're doing is actually pinging to validate that we've deployed this application. Scrolling. I promise I'm not going to be scrolling forever. Here we go. Okay, so here's this analyze job. Cool. Okay, I see folks having conversations about plans to integrate security features into action runs in the workflow. So Mert, okay, so I didn't pay Mert to say that, right? But that's exactly what I want to demonstrate here. So check this out. I see you, Mr. Mert, in the LinkedIn chat, okay? So if you look at line 178, you have this analyze job, okay? So this is where we integrate our native AppSec tools, and you can also integrate any third-party AppSec tools into your pipeline. Okay, so you see that I named this job SAST, and that reflects here in the jobs that have been executed. You can see the strategy. So I actually run this scan across all these different versions of Node before I deploy it. Debatable in utility, but that's what we do to demonstrate it. And so in this case, because it's an interpreted language, this is a JavaScript application. We don't need to necessarily build the application, but we are able to initialize CodeQL. And so we initialize that CodeQL environment. And what code scanning basically is going to do is take my application and break it down into a queryable database, and then run these CodeQL queries, which model security vulnerabilities against my application. So we're going to look for all types of vulnerabilities in my app on line 22 when we actually perform this analysis. And so there's a library that we include by default with a number of queries that will run against your application. You can also expand on that through a custom configuration file that I think you might have seen in the past. And so there's a configuration file that you can include that also will allow you to drop in 0-day vulnerabilities that have been modeled in CodeQL. So if you want to say, hey, are any of my apps exposed to 0-day, this new 0-day, and there's a CodeQL query for that in the open source world, pull that in and run it across your repos, and you'll be able to see. So Mert, I hear you saying awesome. That's great. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to do some celebrations there in the LinkedIn chat. Give myself applause there. Cool. So yeah, so we run the analysis. We have the baseline libraries. We have in the configuration file itself to include additional scans for quality and for other types of vulnerabilities. And I see Hollywood, Jonathan Cardona is also in there interacting with you all. So this was the SAST part of this workflow. So I'm going to scroll all the way to the top and actually back out of here. So hopefully that was interesting for you. I just wanted to illustrate, what that experience was like, and show you kind of what the end state will be before we actually go in and build some of this stuff together. And so again, this is where I'm going to actually get hands-on and implement a CI pipeline using GitHub Actions, and Learning Lab's publicly available. It's free. It's a great way to learn about new features. So Dan, I see. If you're tuning in after the fact and not live with us, we are having chats in the LinkedIn chat here. But I see, who was it? I think it was Mr. Daniel in there. He's saying that he might have signed up for the wrong course. No problem. Just click this top link here to go to lab.github.com. You can search for continuous integration, and you can start the course from there. And so there's a lot of different topics. You can look for CodeQL there and actually write your own queries against a C# application. I debated doing that with you all, but I'm not a C# expert, and so I didn't want to get out of my depth. And so I hope you'll forgive me for that. Maybe in the future, that's something that we'll do live with you all. So this is what we're going to do. Again, feel free to just watch me do it. Feel free to do it alongside. I see Nakati commenting in there on the LinkedIn chat. I'm going to drop in that link one last time, so feel free to grab it out of there and do your development alongside us. So let's go ahead and start this course. And the great thing about Learning Lab is you're using GitHub to learn about GitHub. It's not perfect in terms of the automation. Sometimes it gets hung up. Sometimes it takes a little while. And you might actually have to restart the course, but it's really great to learn. And generally, like if we come on site with your org because you're a customer, or we're doing some hackathon and we want to teach you some new functionality inside the platform, this is what we'll use because it just scaffolds out so well, and the experience is really good. So feel free to explore lab.github.com on your own time. So we are just cloning the course materials to my environment. I think we've gone there now. So it's been cloned. Yeah, so look, if you see on the right side, you should have this for yourself. You can see that this new repo, GitHub Actions for CI, now lives in my user space. And so there it is. And we have these steps that we're going to go through in the course. We're going to set up use a templated workflow, validate that workflow can run successfully. I think it actually fails at some point here when we try to reuse artifacts in different jobs. And so that'll be interesting for us to hack on together. Hopefully I get stumped because I know what you're really all here for is blood, and you want to see me get tripped up, right? So let's go ahead and get started and use a templated workflow. All right, so again, super cool. You can see that GitHub Learning Lab is a bot that actually comments in this repo that it created for me. And really, the comments kind of walk you through the lesson. So I'm going to get out of the way here. I can see that I'm totally blocking what you're looking at. So I see Basil's looking for some advanced functionality in GitHub projects. We hear you loud and clear, my friend, and we're working on some awesome stuff that we'll talk about soon. So I'm going to move over onto this side. Hopefully that's a little easier for you to see. And yeah, how's that? Actually, if you're looking over my shoulder, you're not going to be reading this stuff, so I'm going to make myself a little bit bigger. Here we go. So there's a bug. Someone's opened an issue for this repo, and we're probably going to want to integrate CI to make sure that these bugs don't make their way into any higher level environments in the future. And so GitHub Learning Lab bot has commented here. It teaches us a little bit about CI. And so if you want to learn about CI, if you want people in your org to learn about CI, this is a great way to do that because it really walks them through the course. So feel free, if you're doing this on your own, to do that yourself or just to watch over my shoulders. Totally cool as well. Okay, so there's always an activity associated with each of these issues. You can see that the Learning Lab bot has opened this issue, and it's asking me to create a pull request with a templated workflow. So it makes it super easy, kind of cross links across my repo. I'm going to go to the Actions tab, choose the templated node workflow, and commit the workflow to a new branch with a pull request titled CI for node. So my task is to create a new CI workflow through the Actions tab. Now, what's good about this is I've already hinted to, if you're listening a little bit earlier, I was talking about what that experience is if you're a new repository and you're integrating Actions for the first time. And so this is the experience. I'm just gonna go like this with my hands so you can see what that experience is, and maybe I'll hold the icons for you here. So this is the experience when you're landing in a new workflow page. These pretty much scaffold out CI for your workflow, and you also have these services. So check out, like, there's an Azure deployment workflow pre-baked. You got AWS workflows, all types of workflows that you can just click to set them up, and it'll scaffold it out for you. Now you can set it up yourself if you choose to, or just commit one of those workflow files to your GitHub directory. You can do that as well. Okay. So let's go ahead. I think it wanted me to do this. So I'm going to set up this workflow here. And since you all are now experts on GitHub Actions workflows, let me just make my screen larger, not too large. So since you're all experts now on GitHub Actions workflows, because we talked through the other one, I'll just breeze through this and we can merge it and hopefully get a pat on the back from the automation. So the name of this workflow is Node.js CI. We can see lines 6 to 10. Here are our triggers. We want to trigger on a push to our main branch or a pull request against our main branch. We're going to run this job in a Linux machine on GitHub Actions, or so GitHub infrastructure. You can also run this stuff on-prem. You might already be familiar with how to do that. If not, our documentation, I think describes the process to get that stood up pretty well. So check that out. So we're going to do a CI matrix strategy across all these different versions of Node. We're going to check out the latest version. So I pointed to this before, right? Now you notice it again. This is the checkout action that we used earlier in order to get the latest version of our code back into our runtime environment. And then lines 28 to 30, that's where we run CI, that's where we run a build, that's where we run a test. So I see folks are, yeah, cool, okay. Okay, good. So I see folks are still active in the LinkedIn chat, maybe making fun of me a little bit for trying to hold those icons, but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start this commit here. I'm just going to make it a little smaller because I think it kind of distorted my my interface. So you know, let's start a commit, and I cannot push it directly to the main branch. I'm going to commit it here. I think they wanted me to name the pull request CI for Node. So okay, this is just naming the commit against this branch. It has no requirements for the name of the branch, I think. So I'm just going to go ahead and commit it, and I'm just going to go ahead and name that PR, and I'm going to go ahead and create the PR. Okay. So check it out. I created that pull request CI for Node. It says there was a success. Great job adding the templated workflow. Thank you. And we're going to run a templated workflow. Okay, so now the Learning Lab bot is doing what I've already done. Automation is also replacing my job. So, so that's a reality we all have to reckon with. So the GitHub Learning Lab bot is commenting on and teaching you about each of the steps of all the jobs within your workflow. And so you see here, it's going to talk about the triggers and all this good stuff. I'm going to scroll through that. We've already talked about it. If it's interesting and maybe I spoke too quickly, feel free to, spend your time there as well. Cool. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll down to the next activity. Or did I already scroll past the activity? Y'all probably saw the activity here. I'm just going to go ahead and look for. Okay, it's not there. It's not about, it's discussed. Okay. Let's see, I'm going back to the original issue. I don't know, maybe you've seen where I haven't seen. Okay, this is interesting. So it looks like our CI actually failed. It failed after 33 seconds. And so this is actually kind of cool anyway, even though it kind of illustrates that I have not successfully set up CI. This is cool because it shows you that some checks were not successful and what that experience is. And so once it fails, we cancel out the rest of the matrix builds and report that back to your checks service. And so, okay, so here's, it looks like the bot was just delayed a moment, but here's our new activity. So it wants us to navigate to the open pull request titled add our jest tests and merge the PR. So, okay, so it actually tells us why it failed. So let me go to the details here. And let's explore together why this failed. So here I am in the pull request workflow. I'm looking at my checks tab, and I can see each of the steps of my workflow as it's being executed. And you can see that it failed on npm run test. No tests were found. So basically, I can see that no tests were found here and that, the process completed and it exited. So basically I'm out of luck. No tests are actually even integrated here. So let me go back to the conversation in this PR. I'm going to scroll down for a moment. Sorry, I'm scrolling fast, but that's just to get to the meat and potatoes. So, okay, let's look at the activity here. It says navigate to the open pull request titled add just test and merge the PR. So we're going to add some tests, keep our tabs kind of light here. So here is the, I'm in a pull request number 3 that was open for me. So it says, great job, thank you. This pull request introduces Jest, a popular testing framework. We see some commits here from the rest of the team. I see Gabenga commenting in there. This is awesome. Thank you for that. Thanks for the feedback. If there's anything you'd like to see, feel free to share that back with me and with us at GitHub, and we're going to show you anything that's interesting for you. So that's the idea. I see Jose's working with Hollywood. That's awesome. Hollywood's awesome, super technical. Used to work at NASA, bright guy. I always like to learn from him. So that's why he is the moderator here. Okay, so it says, great job, go ahead and merge this PR. So now we have Jest tests. So hopefully now when we run CI, it'll actually see our tests. We'll see whether or not they actually pass, but we'll actually go ahead and just merge this PR. Hollywood grimacing in the chat there, blushing, I'm sure. So it looks like the Learning Lab bot's now waiting on the test. It says, great, now that the test framework's configured, we should see a response from it soon. So let's go ahead and actually dig in and see if that is true. Okay, so check this out. See these yellow dots here? That's just illustrating that our checks are in progress, right? And so we're running these workflows. We're trying to determine whether or not our CI passed. So I'm scrolling to the top of the pull request. So I want to go back to the checks tab without clicking on it directly from that details link that was in at the bottom of the PR. And so we can see, okay, here are these steps that comprise this build 10.x job, because we have this matrix CI, and now it's running npm test. We'll see what the results of that are in a moment. Okay, so I noticed that this keeps running faster, which is kind of funny. I wonder if there are any performance implications for Node 12 versus other Node versions. I'm sure somebody with deeper knowledge than I would have that. So I see Daniel lost connection. Hopefully the rest of you are still kind of good to go. Just going to go ahead and give you a thumbs up, Daniel, just to acknowledge that you are there. I'm not seeing anything in any Slack chats either that we've all lost connection. So I'm going to continue to roll forward. Okay, so Mr. Mohit, I see you. Great, sir. That's great. Can you want to SSH into the VM when it's running the jobs? Don't ask me why. So you cannot SSH into my VMs, but you can SSH into your own VMs if you're hosting them on-prem, of course. And so you'd want to set up your own on-prem machines in order to do that. And so you can do that. Go to the docs. Hollywood will probably share those with you, Mr. Kamal. I see your thumbs up. Thank you for that. And you'll see it there. Cool. Okay, back to the content that I was sharing with you all. And again, hopefully you're doing this on your own, because this is something that the origin of this, again, was that Learning Lab module. So you can do this on your own time, or you can just watch along. So this failed, my CI failed, and the reason it failed, it looks like, is not because there were no tests, but because my tests just failed, okay? And so they just were no good. So initializer with 2 players failed. Some of these tests just failed. So they expected some value, and that's not the value that they got. So that's okay. Scrolling through here, see it says that they expected the name Nate, instead they got bananas, and that's bananas. So let's go back to our PR here, or this was not the PR, that's the issue from earlier, sorry. Let's go back to the PR conversation and see what our bot says. We'll see what our bot says and take it from there. So again, we noticed that the CI is failing. All these other checks stopped executing once we exited. So let me scroll. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling fast. I just try to whip through this stuff so we get to the parts that are really interesting. So it looks like the testing framework is configured. We should get a response from it soon. We did get that response, so hopefully this bot picks up on that. So we read the actions log. We identify which tests failed. We saw that together. Nate, bananas, that test. Raphael, hello. See you in the chat as well, my friend. Cool. Okay. So activity, tell the bot which test is failing so we can fix it. Navigate to log output, identify a name of a failing test, comment the name of the failing test. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead back into the details here for a moment and look for one of the names of the test and comment them, and let's see what happens. Cool. Actually, so it auto-scrolled me. I didn't scroll that time. It auto-scrolled me, and it looks like we're good to go. Hollywood sharing some of the official plugins. Thank you for that, my friend. So what does it want exactly? The name of a failing test. What is the name of the test? What do y'all think? Starts the game with a random player? I think that's probably the name of a test. So let's go ahead and drop that in there and see if it likes that. So it wants me to comment the name of a failing test here. By here, maybe it just means in this PR. So I'm just going to go ahead and comment, and we'll see what happens. Did I have a period at the end of it? No? Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and comment. And let's see if that makes our automation happy or not. Okay, so what does it say? I see a new comment. I'm going to scroll to see reading failed logs. Okay, so here was my comments that starts the game with a random player, reading the failed logs. One of the failing tests is initialized with 2 players. Okay, I think we saw that before when we were looking through the logs, so no worries that that's not the one I reported. We also saw this. That was not right, native bananas. Okay, one of the failing tests, if you dig deeper into the logs, you notice these results in particular. So this is, again, it's really nice. It's kind of walking me through why my CI failed. And so hopefully it teaches you exactly that, which is how to debug your CI. And so it's going to ask me, okay, so the automation wants me to make the changes suggested below, and then it's going to respond when the workflow runs. And so it looks like these changes are to add bananas and swap that out with P2 here, that variable. So let's see what it says. This line is causing the problem. Let's fix it by initializing this instance of P2 to the proper value. Edit the source game file directly or accept the suggestion below. So I can edit the file or I can just commit the suggestion. I'm going to defer to you all what you think I should do. My preference is always whatever is easiest and it's right. So I'm going to call myself a typical developer here and give myself some celebrations because it's easy to do. So let's go ahead and commit here. And again, feel free to drop in that LinkedIn chat there, whatever direction you'd like to go here. Okay, and so Hollywood, I think, so Hollywood, I just want to call your attention to what Mert's asking for in the LinkedIn chat there. I'm sure we could send him some documentation to how to actually print the directory that the runner's in, or print the directory that you're in on the runner at runtime. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and commit these changes. And okay, so suggestion's been applied, and now it's rerunning my CI, which should pass because this was just suggested to me by the bot itself. So let's go ahead. Okay, that actually failed. Let's see why it failed. Okay, so it looks like it failed again. Expected game.player to be Nate. And we still got bananas. Okay, that's interesting. Let's scroll back up and see. One of the failing tests, if you dig deeper in the logs, you may notice these results in particular. Initialized with 2 players. Expected game.p2 to be Nate. This tells us that the unit test has been written with names. To find out, it may help to know it's common practice to name test files the same as the code file they're testing in. Make the changes suggested below. Okay, let's see. So we made the changes. Oh, were there more than one change suggested here? No. Oh, okay. So it just took a minute to update. So that's good. There's no debugging necessary, which kind of lets me off the hook, lets you off the hook. So that's great. It says great job. Thank you for that. It did all the work for us, which is awesome, but it also just illustrates how to debug live. So it's going to respond when we merge the PR. Go ahead and merge the PR. Again, you see the experience here. So something I'll tell for the folks on the AppSec side, like Mert, check this out. And some of the other folks I saw commenting, I saw John commenting in here early, Tassin as well. So this interface is what you might have already experienced with like all your third-party plugins. So if you have your CI already integrated, if you have like your whatever work item tracking tools it is that you're satisfying, some work item with this PR, the same experience is true with SAST. And so if I had code scanning enabled, it would say, code scanning here. I think we saw that maybe before in our demo when we were looking at Dependabot, but code scanning being here as a required status check. And so again, the idea is we're going to enable you to enforce policies or honor policies if you're just on the dev side. That if you're introducing some pull request with a certain vulnerability or a regression, you can block that PR from getting merged, like you do with CI today. So let me go ahead and merge this PR without saying anything else there. Okay, so it says it'll respond when I merge a PR, and it says let's go to the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's go to the next step together. Awesome. And it says, see that Kashav's asking about internship opportunities. Yes, there are definitely internship opportunities, open positions at GitHub. We're looking for awesome developers, folks who are passionate about developers. So if you enjoy working with GitHub, if you're a developer, please check out the opportunities. We'd love to meet you. What else is going on there? Mr. Jose, whatever's easier is right. New mantra. That's right, Mr. Jose. We're just taking the easy way out. But you know what? If it's easy and it's right, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how to argue with, like, how do you argue against that? And Mr. Ozan, cool. Not enough Stack Overflow tabs open. Good observation by Max. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Because it's doing it all for me. It's making it so easy. I don't even need to copy and paste anything. Everything's here. So that's a lot of fun. Cool, so I'm gonna go ahead and thumbs up that, cool. Okay, so let's look at the next task here. I know we have like 10 minutes left together, give or take a few. So I'd encourage you, please continue to follow along. If you're interested in just going to Learning Lab, doing this on your own time, that's okay as well. Feel free to ask any questions. If you're blocked on some feature implementation, your own org, on your own project, if there's a specific interest to you, drop that in the chat here. And we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to build future content based on your interests. That's what we're here for, right? Is really to kind of enable you to use the platform as best as you can. So here is an issue, a workflow for the entire team. It says, now that we learned to set up CI, let's try a more realistic use case. I would argue that was fairly realistic, but it's okay. So let's look at our activity. Edit the existing workflow with new build targets. So edit your existing workflow file in a new branch. In the file, target versions 12 and 14 of Node only. Open a PR titled Improve CI for your change. Okay, so it just doesn't want us to consume all of its compute and use a ton of cycles on these different versions of Node. Understandable, and I understand the point here. So you'll notice it takes me right to the edit. And so something I'll share with you, if you haven't already noticed this standard, your workflows, your infrastructure, your application security as code, all that stuff, all that operational stuff that is kind of scoped to your repository on GitHub, we'd encourage you to consider putting that in your .github directory of your repository. So in this case, for a GitHub Actions workflow, we're in the .github directory under our Actions workflows, and we've created this Node.js CI file. And so maybe one level up from here, or maybe at the same level, you can argue, you might have your SAST scans with GitHub code scanning, where you're running your code QL. And maybe you like other security tools. Maybe you're running Veracode there. Maybe you're running checkmarks. Any of the other tools that you kind of know and love to use, you can do that. So I totally forgot the task at hand. I went on that little tangent there, but it says open a pull request, drop this to just 12 and 14. So maybe you've done that yourself already. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Drop those versions, and we're just going to go ahead and start that commit and commit this. Did it want a specific name for my commit? No, just the PR name. So I'm flipping back and forth between tabs. Yes, I recognize they're not Stack Overflow tabs, but they are GitHub tabs. So I'm going to go ahead and create this PR to improve CI, and our automation will probably comment here, I would assume. Okay, so it has. Let's close the other tabs so as to not cause any confusion. So okay, where are we? Matrix builds. So okay, so it says, great work so far. By targeting specific versions of Node, we've configured a build matrix. I'll respond when the commit changes in the comment below. Okay, that's interesting because I already made this change. What's it want us to do? Edit your workflow file to build for Windows. Okay, so it wants us to build for Windows. I think we were building on Linux before. Yeah, so you can see so it wants us to build across Ubuntu and Windows. And you can see actually the versions here of each of these operating systems for these VMs. And again, this is using GitHub infrastructure, but as some folks were pointing out in that LinkedIn chat here, who was it? I think it was, what was your name, my friend? Was it Kamal? It may have been. Mert. It was Mert. Yeah, so Mert was talking about creating on-prem runners. If you need access to on-prem resources, your artifacts on-prem, or deploying some on-prem infrastructure, some networking integrations, you can use on-prem runners, and obviously you'll have greater control over those machines than leveraging ours. But the nice thing about using our infrastructure is you can define everything as code and just leverage, it's just so much easier because your infrastructure comes out of the box and will dynamically scale. Awesome. And I see Mr. Jose. Yeah, Jose saying great job, guys. So great job, everyone. Great job, all the folks who worked on the actions team. Great job to you all for continuing to just kind of validate it and give it your feedback. So that's really what this feature is driven by. GitHub Actions is driven by your feedback. So, all right, cool. So let me stop monologuing and actually get back to work before this automation replaces me. So step 8, target a Windows environment, and it wants me to commit the suggestion. I'm going to take the lazy way out again, easy way. I saw Mr. Jose earlier. Take the easy way out and the right way. So it's easy, but it's right. If my wife hears me say that, it's not going to go well. Okay, so GitHub Learning Lab says, okay, great. If you're looking at the logs, you'll notice that multiple builds will exist. 4 builds to be exact, 2 versions of Node. But it's 2 times 2 because it's 2 versions across each of our operating systems, right? So I'm going to scroll to the bottom. Let's actually go there and see what's going on here. I think that's what we did. Didn't we keep that matrix build? I believe we did. Where are our checks here? Where are our checks? Okay, okay, just took a moment to update. Yeah, so so this is what I expected to see. I guess it's pointing on this side. So let me go over here for you. Yeah, so it was just taking a moment to load, but the idea is that we're running Ubuntu across these different Node versions. We're running Windows across these Node versions. Looks like all the CI passed, which is awesome. That should report back in our PR workflow just exactly where at the bottom here where all our checks are. So all these checks have passed. Cool. Let's see what the next action is that this piece of automation wants us to take on. So we have 2 Node versions of Node, 4 builds because we have these operating systems. Okay, so here's the activity. Edit your workflow file to separate build and test jobs. Create a new job called test as follows. We use the ellipses. Okay. Okay, let's do it. So what does it want us to do here? I'm going to push my browser to the limit. I'm going to open up a separate tab, a separate window rather. Okay, so this will be really, I think it's going to be the last thing that we do together before I just kind of set you all free for the weekend. But if you have any comments, questions, we're going to stay on this LinkedIn chat for a few moments. So if you want to give us feedback, if you want to ask any questions, feel free to do that on that thread, and we can answer any questions that you have there. Yeah, and it's been a pleasure working with you all. It's been a lot of fun just sharing some of these new features on GAS. It's been a lot of fun just walking you through Learning Lab. Hopefully that's useful for you to learn some of our new features in a hands-on way. If you're a hands-on kind of kinetic learner, that'll be a good opportunity to do that. And my friend Jonathan Cardona there is going to answer some questions. I see AJ moderating the chat as well for you all. So, okay, so it wants us to edit the workflow file, create a new job called tests, and then build. So in the build job, include the following, okay. So let's go ahead and do that. Actually, I lost my window now. Here it is. Okay. So what does it want us to do here? Where is it? My build job. Build runs on Ubuntu, strategy, matrix. Okay, steps. Okay, so I'm just going to take this and apply it here. Steps, uses, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I see all our CI stuff there too. Maybe I should drop in the CI first. Build and test. Here we go, friends. We're into it now. There's no turning back, right? Okay, so we're able to automatically detect that this value is not aligned and that it's null. So this is for build. Okay. And then we'll run on test. So friends, this isn't necessarily the whiz bang we like to leave you with. And so, so I'd encourage you again, if you have any comments, questions, feel free to drop those in the LinkedIn chat. We're still here hanging out, moderating that for you. Hopefully this was both interesting, hopefully you learned something new. If not, hopefully it reinforced some concepts you're already familiar with. if you have any feedback from this session, if you have any feedback on features themselves, so we can see now this is going to satisfy, I think, this request, and we'll go ahead and commit it. Go ahead and drop that in the LinkedIn chat. We'll be happy to kind of chat with you about that. Where's this commit button here at the bottom of my screen?
Awesome, Kevin. Thanks for all the hands-on resources. I mean, like, that's a lot for someone to go through, even if they're just starting with Actions, getting into the Learning Lab, seeing actual examples, trying to find things. But, what if you're looking for kind of broader content? Like, what if this kind of thing isn't what's available at your company or organization right now? Like, is there anything that folks should look out for to help them bring these kind of capabilities to their companies and organizations?
So my understanding is that what we are basically something that we're looking to break folks into is a new event series that we're launching. So keep me honest with that. Is there a new event series for folks who are leveraging GitHub or at their orgs?
Yep,
I'll let you kind of plug that.
I've definitely teed things up a little bit. Yeah, it's a new series called In Focus, and it's a global event for enterprise software, talking about DevOps, talking about advanced security, talking about developer experience, and it'll be available in all three, well, at least three regions globally. And you can sign up. I'll drop the link into the chat. It's called infocus.github.com. And if
Awesome.
I recall correctly, I think we'll actually see you during that event as well, Kevin.
Yes, you will. So I apologize in advance, but I will be there. And as always, we're always open to seeing you, having conversations, and learning from you what we can do better to help enable you all. So until next time, I suppose.
Thanks, Kevin.
Cheers.